All right. Coming to the stage to lead our first panel is Christina Mitine. She's our senior go-to-market lead, and she helps our customers adopt cloud technology and innovate with AI. She has cross-functional experience in sales, customer success, and data analytics, and she's led global initiatives for startups and Fortune 500 companies. She's a committed advocate for inclusion in tech. She was formerly the co-president for women at AWS, and she is a mentor to women across the industry. So Christina, come on up.
What a beautiful job. Thank you for that. We saw you.
Well, thank you all for being here today. Intentional innovation in the AI era. I think we hear those words a lot, and it's not something we talk about. The very human side of leading through acceleration, uncertainty, ambiguity, emerging technology. One day it's generative AI, the next it's agentic AI. But people don't move at machine speed, and leadership really requires that intention, trust, and clarity. And what I'm really excited for today is the three leaders who are here. So I'm going to introduce them, and then we're going to dive right in. Right here next to me, Director of Sales at AWS, Anasuya Strasner, has over 20 years of experience in technology, sales, and brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise in leading sales strategy, large account management, and customer and industry engagement. Her cross-industry experience entails high-tech, retail, industrial, and health sciences. Let's give a round of applause to our first panelist. Priya Rajagopal is an accomplished technology executive and leader serving as the Vice President of Product and Technology at Expedia Group, a global leader in travel and hospitality. In her current role, Priya leads the product and technology strategy for the customer service technology platform, spearheading the development of AI-forward experiences. Another big round of applause. And we also have Ariel Allen, who supports Starbucks Pass Cloud Foundation Services team, which builds and manages a secure, scalable, and automated cloud-based platform designed to meet security best practices. They provide complete infrastructure services, allowing engineering teams to focus on application development, automated testing, and continuous deployments that accelerate innovation to our global customers. So a final round of applause. All right, well, we're going to dive right in. We're going to start with a quick rapid-fire round. So I'm going to have each of our panelists give an answer. Try to keep it a quick 10 to 15 seconds. So our first question is, what is your favorite AI tool for workflow, automation, or content creation right now, and a quick why?
So I'm going to pick Perplexity. I feel a little bit like I'm cheating because I'm not saying an AWS tool, but I love Perplexity. I use it as a starting point for a lot of just like ideas, questions, basics, and then I'll take it into other tools and workflow. And I like it because it's up to date and it's a modern search. And there are other amazing search capabilities that other tools have, but I do love Perplexity.
Amazing. Priya?
For me, it's Google's Notebook LM. So if y'all have used it, it really organizes videos, audios, creates podcasts that I could listen to when I'm driving, and keeps me organized, which is hard, right? Like, so just lets you create your own notebooks. And the most important thing is you can action on time with the Notebook LM. So again, cheating on AWS, but it's a great product. So.
Those are both great. I'm totally going to take yours because that sounds awesome. I'm just kind of the tried and true ChatGPT. I really still love it because it's simple and it's everywhere I need it to be, so I don't really have to think that hard to go faster.
Awesome. All right, Ariel, we'll start with you and then come back this way. What do you think the biggest roadblock for leaders is when it comes to AI adoption right now?
Fear. So I think there's a lot of fear of the unknown, which is surprising since we work in technology. But I think fear also masks itself in it's not secure as well. So I would combine those together. But I feel like the more that you actually get into it and see what it is and realize how you can and cannot control it, I think that you overcome that fear like with any technology. And I think that can help you with that roadblock.
Yeah, I would agree with Ariel, right? Like one of the biggest things is organizational inertia because of the fear of change. But also, I strongly believe it's coupled with lack of clarity on why we are building certain aspects, right? Like lack of a vision, lack of clarity, which is upon all of us leaders to drive that clarity and a strategy, because the outcomes don't change. Why you're doing things don't change, but it's how you do it is where we need to enable people. So I think both of those coupled drive the organizational inertia.
I think people get overwhelmed. I think that there are a lot of different capabilities that AI offers, whether it's around your workflow, whether it's around what you do personally. And then there's obviously, like, and we're here in this panel, there's an emotional element of it as well. But I really think it's overwhelmed and thinking that something that's positioned as easy can also seem very hard because it's like what tool, what capability, for what reason, and kind of to Priya's point, like what's your why? But I think it can be overwhelming at times. And so really thinking about what is your why and what exactly are you trying to accomplish is really important. And also just starting in like small chunks.
Yeah, I think those are all great. And I think to bring it all together, I would love for each of you to finish this sentence with ideally no more than 3 words. The future of leadership is.
Critical thinking.
It is responsibly and intentionally human-centered.
It's human.
Well, thank you all so much. I really want to anchor us in the moment that we're leading in today. When you hear human-centered leadership in the AI era, what does that actually look like in tech today? How would you describe what it feels like leading through this pace of cloud acceleration and constant change? Ariel, let's start with you based on your work at Starbucks and previous experience.
Yeah, I mean, not to be too pedantic, but it is having humans and in all of this, right? So I think, diving into some of that fear or the uncertainty is helping people understand how to start using AI and realizing that they've been using AI for a long time, and really understanding that it's how they use it to go faster and be more efficient. And so if they kind of look at their career and they look at through their whole life, they've been trying to find ways to go faster or be more efficient or make more money. There's a lot of those types of things that you can use AI and see it as a tool to help you do all of those types of things. And it starts to remove those barriers, but it leads with the human first. It's what does the human want that to do? And I think that is how you got to stay focused on that. And as a leader, when people do bring stuff to you, you always want to ask, where is that human? Where is the human in that? What is the human asking it to do? Where are the gates there that can help you understand what is happening? And also read what it says. The amount of chat responses I have gotten from some of my teammates that I wondered if they read the response from ChatGPT. So yeah, read it. Read what comes back to you. And again, add that human nature right there.
Yeah, we talked quite a bit about this before when we had a chance to connect. I think we often forget that even though our AI tools can help with ideation and content creation, we still have to add that human in the loop. Priya, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well and what you're seeing.
Yeah, I want to start with saying how excited I am for this. And to be part of this transformation is super exciting. It's challenging, but yes, for me, the reInvent conference is like a candy store. I'm like, oh, what's next? And, there's a lot of things that we can learn and unlock, right? But the title of this session is being intentional, right? So we need to be intentional on these things, but I break it down in 3 things, right? One is people, process, and technology. When you look at your people, you really need to think about hey, not rewarding just AI initiatives, but how are you kind of rewarding all of the existing initiatives equally to ensure that there is no fear, right? It's not like you're doing the next shiny thing and that's why you're being rewarded, right? So that is one thing that you need to do. Second thing is really bring them along, really assess their change style indicator and bring them along the change curve because everybody takes time to go through that change curve. And how do you bring your team along, whether it's upskilling them, teaching them, coaching them? That's super important. And the third thing is just driving the clarity for them, right? So these are the 3 important things you have to do with your team and just being super, super transparent about what's happening, what are the changes. As soon after you have the information, share it with them. When it comes to process, I would say it's a lot of efficiency. And again, I've told my direct leadership team, like, how can we cut down meetings by 30%? How do you not get into status discussions only, right? How do you gain that productivity benefit of, like, if you mandate 30%, 40% cut in your calendar of meetings, how are you going to unlock your workforce, right? So just, again, like having a lot of planning sessions around it is going to be important. And the third thing is about technology, right? Like how we start off the session. It's not productivity. AI is not about just productivity and efficiency. It's about unlocking your human force to really build that human connection in your technology and your products. So how do you let that happen? By unlocking that efficiency to make sure there's enough design cycles, enough empathy in your design, there's inclusion, right? So you really need to take it back to your technology and making sure that we are unlocking our teams to do the right thing for the human connection in our products.
So we have this phrase within AWS, like internally, which is AI is everyone's job. And the way that I think about it is everyone has, at least the people that I have exposure to, has an idea or something that they wish they had time to get to, and or something they want to get to because they don't feel like but they don't feel like they have enough time. Like either they want more time personally at home, or they've just got that email or that ask on a Friday night and they think, oh my gosh, this is going to like ruin my weekend, or something that you think, oh, I wish I could figure out a way to do this. And there's a personal reason why someone either doesn't have time to get an idea to progress forward or wants time back to go do something personally. So to me, when I think about like AI as everyone's job, it's really thinking about like, what is the why for everyone? What is the thing that you're trying to accomplish, want to accomplish, the idea you have, or the time you want back? And taking it in small chunks to think about and show how you're doing that in your daily life. And so using like a personal example, I literally all the time, I was talking to a colleague the other day and we were preparing for a meeting and we were going through some of like the notes I had and the questions I was asking. And I'm like, just so you know, I didn't memorize all this and I didn't have all this information. I took, what you gave me. I went and did this type of research. I was curious about this topic. And I came up with, like, I made it my own and I made it personal and I came up with a set of questions I wanted to ask. And like, look how much more fun this is and more dynamic and interesting, because instead of me taking like a static piece of content, preparing for a meeting or content that I want to have a conversation around, I'm able to actually be curious and say, gee, I wonder like if there's something new about what is happening with this customer or this person. I wonder if there's any connection between this topic and this topic that I could possibly bring up. I wonder if there's something new that I could learn about. And I'm able to apply all of that into a conversation. And I'll do another like relatable, because I think everyone, no matter what you do, has got something that you find out about at the last minute when you had like a personal plan. And I'll give a recent example where someone asked me a question about like a whole reason my background and business is part of it within enterprises, software, internet, and model providers. And we every year have to come up with like, what is our plan for the year and what is the definition of customers in that space? Super fascinating, but very time consuming to create like that whole definition. And using one of the capabilities that we have internally, I was able to take like all the content that I know. And by the way, that email came to me at like Thursday night and I thought, oh my gosh, this is like gonna be my whole weekend. And I was like, no, it doesn't have to be. It like freed me from being having to really spend my whole weekend and be able to take like ideas and content and other things that I already had put work into and bring it into something that was like an output that enabled me to just progress it. So I mention that because to me, there are little ways every day that we can advance things that we want to do, that we personally want to have time for or have ideas for. And it's really helping bring that to your team and also to bring it to yourself. Like, how do you make it even more personal and actually make it your own by being able to ask the questions and bring that content into your work output? And I really feel like that's in some ways very freeing.
It's exciting to hear all of the different ways, both professionally and personally, that you all are using this. And Priya, you touched upon the word clarity. And I've noticed that many leaders today have to make decisions without perfect clarity. I think it'd be really helpful for the audience here if you could share a moment when your team needed direction, but you yourself were navigating uncertainty. And what did you have to lean on? Skills, behaviors, instincts to really navigate through that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you know, what you need to drive clarity on is definitely, like I mentioned earlier, what is your strategy, what is your purpose, and what outcomes you're trying to build, right? That should be super clear, and those doesn't change with AI or not. AI is a means to get there, but the outcomes and the purpose remains the same, right? Like, so driving that articulation is important, right? And yeah, somebody in the audience said, like, it's go, go, go time. Like, yes, you know, there's a lot, but there are a few things that you have to really be intentional about, right? Like, push where you need, like, model changes, content updates, like, you know, infrastructure updates, rapid iteration to really understand where the technology is heading, because nobody knows what is right and what is wrong, versus other things need a little bit more attention, where it's customer experience design or you know, your organizational design. Those things need a little bit more time. So I think a good example was recently we were trying to come up with a technology approach for an outcome we had come across, and there are 5 different ways of doing these things, right? Like, and yes, you have a cohort of people who are passionate about building it away, and you have so many other partner products, whether it's AWS or many other companies coming up with their own solutions, and things are moving fast, right? Like, so things are uncertain, but you do need to pick a direction that aligns with your long-term strategic direction, both from a product and technology direction. And that's where I think it took us a few cycles, and yes, you know, there is a little bit of disagree and commit from my team, but like we all came together, right? Like, so we had iterations, we had discussions, and then we all came together. And again, like, it was, I don't think we can be in a moment where it's top down and say, like, this is the direction, go with it. You need your team to come along. You need to really have deeper discussions to really bring them along, right? So that was a recent example, but it takes a bit. But once you are at it, you can get the acceleration that you need very quickly. But it can just not be you. It has to be a broader membership team of broader extended leadership of your team to come together. So
I think that's really powerful and shows the impact of the collective. And Ariel, I'd love to dive a little deeper into what Priya was sharing and get your perspective on how have you been balancing the rapid speed of technological change with human leadership skills like communication, trust. We talked about empathy that teams really need to thrive.
Yeah, and I mean, the trust one is what I would double down on with that. So it's great getting all this data, looking at it from different perspectives, grabbing all sorts of data historically and putting it in front of you and finding some algorithm out it that's going to give you some insight. But then going to your team, and Priya, you said it perfectly, presenting it back up to the team, that still is where you as a leader have to provide it in a way that is a safe, psychologically safe environment, right? So this data could actually make people feel, well, that's what I do. It's not what you do. This is something that you can use to help you do more, and how do you present that? And that's where leaders come in and actually start setting those priorities, those strategies, saying, I'm able to offload you to take on this more exciting work, and this is that exciting work. And I think that's really super important, is that you as leaders, you know your team, or even engineers, you know each other. You want to keep and maintain that trust. AI is not going to do that for you. It's just going to be that cold data point that you're seeing. How do we bring it forward where you actually want to act on that and you're not scared of it and you are excited about what that kind of takes off your plate? Like, if you think about something, and I think, you know, you were talking about it as well, like getting to your weekend, right? And I've had something where I had an incident. We won't go into much detail, but I got the pleasure of giving some bullet points to our board of directors about things, and it wasn't in the right format. And so I could have spent my weekend trying to make it in the right format, and I'm an engineering director, so you know I didn't really want to do that. Or I could use my friend ChatGPT and say, hey, make that look like that. And there you go. The data's there, it's my words, but it made it look similar instead of me trying to fight with Word on why did you move that over here? You know, it made it work, right? But the point that I'm trying to come back to, though, is that if you bring that data to your team of like, it'll help you format PowerPoint. Okay, well, what if that's someone's entire job? Right? All right, well then why don't you talk to them about why are you excited that they can now use that? What more can they do to accelerate themselves and be happier and get back to stuff that they want to go do. So I really liked what you pointed out there about like getting back to what you want to get done and why do you want to go do that, and you can kind of get rid of some of the stuff you don't really want to do. But if you bypass that trust and if you just show up to your team and you say, look, I can cut 50% of what you're doing because we're just going to use AI, you won't have a team. You're going to have 100% cut there. So it's important that you bring up why you want them to use that so they can go faster. I think back early in my career, virtualization was scary. It was very scary. Well, hang on, I rack and stack servers. What do you mean that one thing can do 100 servers? I don't know about that. And you guys can keep going, right? You can see automation is doing the same thing. This is cyclical, right? But I think if you can bring it up to your team in a way that shows them how they can be empowered by it and go faster and actually have a more fulfilled life, they're gonna go for it. So I just wanted to double down on trust.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that. How many of you have read this book called Unleashed? Have you read that? Okay. It's a great book, and it talks about this trust cycle, right? So it's about, what you don't let wobble. There are three things. One is authenticity, so be really authentic with your teams, right? Second is about logic. So you cannot be illogical when you're coming up with ideas or any presentation. So there's a lot of intention that goes with it. And then the third thing is empathy, whether it's for your team or whether it's for your products you're building. So if any of these three wobble, then you lose the trust with your team. And that is really important that you keep at it. And just make sure that you continue throughout this and bring them along the change curve.
Honestly, I'd love to get your thoughts too, whether it's from empathy or trust, how you've been leading with your teams, and if you have anything else to add.
I mean, I think there's a lot of words that I was just listening and thinking about and picking up, like in terms of, being authentic and transparent, thinking about what is the why associated with what you're trying to accomplish, the ideas that you're able to bring forward, and if you think about it, it's like AI is a capability that you can take advantage of. It doesn't replace your ability to do critical thinking and come up with the reason why you're going to ask the questions that you're going to ask, or the content that you need to come forward, or the fact that there was actually something you needed to do and accomplish and produce. All it did is, I think, take your words and bring them forward. And I think just being thoughtful about the why of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish, and what tool for what capability for what reason. And I do think that authenticity is a really important part, because especially when you are using AI for communication or messages or translation, being clear about when you are doing that and saying like, hey, I got to this because I had this idea. I was thinking, almost like the show your work. I had this idea. I got to this output because I took these steps. I checked these tools or these services or capabilities. And this is what I came up with. What do you think? Do you have any other ideas? And I think creating that ability, or like that transparency to see, here's where I came up with this, and here's how I did this, and here's the tools that I used to do this, is actually like very authentic and transparent, but also taking advantage of the capabilities to help you show the output. And maybe the other thing I would just say is like lack of clarity. I think it can be scary, and I mentioned that word overwhelming with all the tools. Where are they going? What's going on? What is it, what does everything agentic mean to me? How do I know where the security and safeguards are associated with that? There are a lot of things we don't know the answer to yet. But there are things we do know the answer to. And so, I'll do like a practical example. Within our team, there's a lot of change. Who's this manager? What's this structure? How are we gonna change? What's gonna happen next year, et cetera. And it can freeze you. Or you can stop and say, okay, like what do we know? I know what customers I'm working with. I know what teams I'm working with. I know what I know that I do wanna have some kind of plan associated with next year. How do I think through that? What things do I know already about what's happening in the market, what's happening in the industry? There's a lot we do know, and I think really being grounded, almost like that would be my last word I would sort of land on this sort of topic here, is just being grounded and thinking about, okay, what's my why? How am I being authentic about the tools and capabilities and messaging that I'm using and how I'm coming up with it? And am I staying grounded in what I do know, or am I like losing my center with getting distracted by all the things I don't know yet? Because there's a lot we do know, and if you think about like, what's my why, and how do I stay focused and authentic associated with it, you can make those steps forward. So those are just some thoughts based on listening to what you both shared.
Yeah, so you started touching upon this, diving into our next question, so I'd love if you're interested in expanding first is, how do you decide when to push for speed versus when to pause when you don't have the clarity or the content or the context? Do you need that? And how have you navigated that?
Well, I think I mentioned it very intentionally, like critical thinking and reading the output of what you're doing. And I mean, critical thinking is a key part of just thinking about how do you progress on your AI capabilities and tools. So to me, you know, when I think about like how do we go fast, and I think almost to your question on like how do we also go slow, really being thoughtful on like what am I trying to accomplish, right? Am I trying to come up with a strategic plan? Am I just trying to create notes from a meeting, right? Am I trying to come up with a new definition of an industry or category, right? Like that's thoughtful work. Or am I just trying to take words that I already came up with and put them in a different format? And I think when you're really clear about the why, which you should slow down, all of us should slow down and be like, what am I trying to accomplish? Why am I using this tool? And taking the extra time to not rush through that will also make you feel a lot clearer in the capability or whatever you're trying to do from a services capability. And so like, for example, I'll think of like Zoom notes or whatever, you know, video tool you're using, but like for Zoom, right? You can do the transcription of the meeting notes, right? I think about before I have a meeting, like, should I be transcribing these notes? Should those notes go to everyone who's a part of that meeting? Should they just come to me so I can read them and translate them and think about what are the key points, right? Like that's a slow down for just a second before I move fast. And then what does that do for me? It gives me the opportunity to make choices associated with like the AI transcription. And it also frees me during the meeting to actually like really listen and pay attention versus trying to grab the notes and make sure that I grab all those notes, which is also hard to listen during that time. You know, like, for example, you know, I'll give like one story and I won't mention any names, but there's a person on my team who wrote a note to a customer that basically, I don't know that they really read that note before they sent it. And they grabbed some content that was externally available and okay to grab, but like really didn't take a minute to think about like, how is my customer going to react to this conversation? Do they really want this piece of data or information brought forward in a public manner? And what is my reason for sending this note? And what do I think the outcome or the reaction is going to be as a result, right? Like that could have been a slowdown before you speed up and have like a great, well-written note. And so I just wanted to touch on that because I think for me, it's always taking a moment with my team or for myself to say, what am I trying to accomplish? What's my why? And then once I know my why, I can go fast, like, right? I get to have my shortcut with my meeting notes or prep for a meeting or think about like the definition of a new industry, but I'm clear on what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And I think that's the slow down part.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's important, a good reminder for all of us too. I know someone asked earlier of, are we replaceable? I think there's a lot that we can do intentionally to better partner with it. Priya, I'm curious if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I think all of us should realize our teams have limited capacity. They're human, right? Like they cannot keep taking on more. And you already have set objectives. For example, my team has major migration milestones that we are undercoming, right? And then obviously we took some stretch goals this year to make progress on AI. And you know, the excitement is real. Every engineer or every product person wants to work on AI. And you know, I was naive at the start of the year saying, yeah, all of you come and do it. Because initially I'd carved out focus groups. And then very quickly we saw like the entire team getting burned out or like, you know, the projects of migration suffering. So we intentionally had to take a step back and really say like everyone will get to do AI in future, but let's build focus teams for focused outcomes to operate as pods while we are continuing to make progress on our migration efforts to ensure that we take the time to really understand, drive clarity, and really be set on what we want to do from, you know, from a product and technology standpoint. And that is working really well, right? Like in terms of having a focused mindset and focused outcomes while we are making progress, because I think momentum builds by having these small wins, and as they accrue, the team is going to get over their fear, like, you know, they're going to find that excitement, there's innovation, and then once we have that momentum going, then it's all about, you know, how do you get the rest of the team along and progress along, right? Like, because things like foundations, migrations, these are so critical to have AI on top of it. Otherwise, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? Like, so you have to kind of have your data foundations, your models, right? Like your content foundations, right? Like most of these LLMs, I don't know if you've read it, 40% of their content comes from Reddit. So it starts with a human, and then ultimately you're trying to solve a problem for a human, and we should be totally aware of that, right? Like because what you input is what AI outputs. So that's what I want to add. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And Ariel, I'd love to get your thoughts and example of a time when you had to intentionally keep the human side of leadership at the forefront, even as you had leaders that were demanding organizational changes and technology continued to accelerate.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I will keep the details sparse, but usually when it comes down to like an incident or an event, I think it's really important, and I liked Anasu's example with her coworker putting something in front of the customer. I think what's really important there is to keep that human at the forefront, right? So when we're talking about, especially these companies, there's some pretty big names on that screen right there, and I think some of you might be customers of them. It's really important that we approach you in a human nature. If we just hit you with the cold, hard facts of maybe why you couldn't get your coffee, it might not make you a customer for life. But if we keep that customer in mind when we are explaining what's going on and how it impacted you, that will mean more to you than just some explanation about something maybe related to a tech breakdown, right? So I think for me, when you are going to be talking to a human, especially an audience that maybe you don't know that well too, you do need to bring back in that human element of understanding. And I also think about that when I'm talking to my team and my leaders. Because again, it's not really about just showing data. Everyone has access to the data. Priya just mentioned the 40% of that, which I didn't know, so thank you. But now I do know that. But how she brought that forward, right, and how she's talking about it, it could have turned everybody off of using that, or it could have been like, oh, good to know. That's interesting. And so I do think that it's really important at that moment, though, that you're kind of, like I said, building that trust back of, yes, this happened, this is what happened, this is what we're doing to change it, these are the things that are going to go forward with it, and it kind of tells that story and that you know who you're talking to. And I love that critical thinking that you commented on as well, Anna. So like I think that really combines it all together, where you have to think through these things when you're going to be presenting them, because again, you can't take back the words, right? So I think you have to be careful how you're presenting this data, because you can't unpull that back, right? And so I think it's really important that you think about that and keep a human in the forefront. So for me, I really think about that when it comes to talking about hard topics, and especially if I'm representing somebody else's work. I really want to make sure that I understand that, and that it's not just me regurgitating whatever AI said. It's that I fully understand it and know how this is going to be received when I say it.
Thank you. I want us to shift a little bit and talk about something that I think we don't often hear about on panels and discussions like this, and it's really the human pressures of leadership. I've noticed that leadership today often comes with the pressure of always being on and capable and composed. And I think it's safe to say that many of us, especially women, have navigated feelings of guilt, perfectionism, striving for balance. And Priya, I'd love to know, with what you're comfortable sharing, what's a personal tension you've navigated, and what helped you lead in a way that was both grounded and effective?
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I have a 2-year-old. She's a toddler. And, since then, there's a lot of things that I have to reset from my own expectations, right? Like, it's like before my kid versus after my kid, right? Like, before I was just like, oh, I'm on all the time. Like, if anybody gives me a Slack, I'm responding to it immediately, right? Like, if it's an email, I didn't really prioritize the sense of urgency. I'm like, I'm going to respond to it early, right? Like, but it's really important to take a step back. I think balance is not possible every day, right? Like work-life balance, we talk about it, we strive for it. But what ended up happening is like I was guilty every day. I'm like, hey, am I doing injustice for my work? Or like, am I not being there for my family with the full energy that I need to be in, right? But I think it takes a lot about taking a step back and really thinking how you want to kind of strike that balance. Last couple of weeks ago, I was in Hawaii celebrating my daughter's birthday, and really spent a week. And on Thanksgiving, I baked a cake for her, first time ever. Like I spent that quality time. And this week, I'm not there, right? Like I'm here, like being fully present, like really learning while my husband is supporting, right? Like so. what I've come to understand is like there's no balance that you can strike every day, but like if you take a broader lens at balance, you just need to kind of make sure when you're being present, you're being human and you're fully energized, because I don't want her to remember me as a tired mom, or like my husband is like, okay, I got like a workaholic mom, right? Like, but you have to kind of make that space for it, and AI enables it today. And how do you keep leaning in on your team and setting them up for success, because I have an extremely talented team, some of them are here, and then, and making sure that, like, how do you give them the empowerment with the right accountability while you're working on more creative things, right? Like, so there is pressure, there is guilt, right? Like, but I think I've come and learned a lot from that. Right now, I spend like my Sundays 2 hours just planning out my week and saying that, hey, these are the days where I can actually do things well, and these are the days where I'm just going to step back and rely on my support system. So we all always have to think about it from a vulnerable standpoint, like, but it's about like having a different perspective to balance, and you can accomplish it, but it requires a lot of intention and planning. So my advice would be just carve out your Sunday, just a couple of hours to really think about how you're going to plan your week. So.
Ariel, honestly, I would love to open it for you if you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to build off that, absolutely. I think that having that connection, so for me, when I get overwhelmed or stressed or feel the guilt and stuff like that, and I really like this question, Priya, so thank you. It's to step away to gain perspective. And so some of the things that I like to do is, so I have a childhood friend of mine, a longest standing friend, and we use a video messaging app. And every day, I had one on the airplane, she'll send me a message about she's just getting ready and we're just kind of, talking. And then on my way into work, I will respond back. Don't worry, I have hands free, so everything's fine. But what I really like, though, is it takes me out of my space for a second. And I'm now hearing about her, and she's an amazing middle school teacher. Shout out to any teachers. It is hard out there. Talk about AI students. Anyways, she is doing awesome. But it really just changes my perspective a little bit. And so what I like to say about that is get more into, I love that you said your sport group, but get more into other people's lives. And even if it's your team, like understand their lives a little bit more. And it kind of helps you see your problems differently, especially if you're feeling very overwhelmed and hopeless. Seeing other people's problems or involving yourselves in their lives a little bit does help you open up that perspective a lot more. And it just makes work less of the forefront for me. And so that really helps in my perspective because while I do love my job, and I love technology, this isn't my entire life. So I really enjoy what I do outside of work. I play around with a little husky dog and have a wonderful husband, and we've got some space to run around with some tractors and stuff. So I just really like to get my hands in dirt and nothing with technology. But I do that to kind of step away and just reground myself literally and figuratively. But just really that connection with somebody outside of even technology helps so much. And to bring it all the way back even into the AI era, like that is what we need to be doing. We need to be even more human. We need to be more connected in this human world and be there for each other. All the AI stuff aside, we need to be actually connecting one-on-one. And that's what I really love about doing that. And it helps me just stay grounded in what really actually matters.
So I'll just complement that and say, when we think about just the phrase at the top here around intention, is again, being intentional with your time. And there's an opportunity here associated with being intentional with your time in the era of AI. And, whether it's around being thoughtful about the way you pay attention to your team or your family or the time that you give back to yourself, there is an opportunity with AI to actually give yourself more time back and be intentional with the way you spend your time. And I'll just use as an example, I have a 16-year-old son, and he's like crazy about like meal prepping. There's all these TikTok videos for like meals and all this other stuff. So I actually used Anthropic Claude for this, and I was like, I need to do meal prepping. I want him to look like all these cool like TikTok videos with all the little Tupperwares all spaced out in these meals. But I need to do everything on Sunday, and I don't want it to be overwhelming, and I want you to make it fun. Read all these, look at all these TikTok videos and all this stuff out here and come up with like a meal plan for me and make it fun and give me like a phrase for encouragement. So I love it. And I did. And it was like, it wasn't overwhelming. I loved it. I spent like maybe 3 hours doing it on Sunday. I do have all those really great glass Tupperware containers that look all stacked up. And it's like a gift back to my son for doing that. And so I mention that because there is an opportunity about figuring out ways to be intentional about your use of AI, and it really ultimately is an opportunity for us to give time back to ourselves and to our teams. But it's also part of like the human part of it, which is what are you trying to accomplish? Why are you trying to accomplish it? And then the other piece, which I think is important, you were talking about that in terms of being grounded, which is like giving yourself the opportunity to do a lot of context switching, I think is important. You know, whether it's around switching teams or paying attention to the different teams or people or what they're doing and what they care about, or is it in your own personal time, whether it's around getting out, finding a way to help someone. I mean, to me, that is like the ultimate hack, is when you're feeling frustrated, stop and think about how you can help someone, even if it's for like 5 minutes. You will 100% immediately feel better. So for me, my hack is figuring out how I bring fun in associated with like my AI usage, and then also thinking about what am I doing to give myself a gift of time back, and seeing it as an opportunity to give time back to my team, time back to myself, time back to my family, and then what am I doing with it? Like, am I paying attention during that time? Because it's a heavily distracting time. And so, you know, really making sure that we're not just like overloading ourselves and overwhelming ourselves with just yet another thing that's faster, but back to the point that you made at the beginning, slowing down to say, like, how can I use this as an opportunity to give myself time back? And so that's, I mean, I feel stressed and overwhelmed and, you know, not enough time and all those things just like everybody else. But I do work hard to say, okay, how do I give myself time back, and what's that gift in that time that I've created with myself?
So you each shared ways that you've been very intentional, and when everything feels urgent or we get that fire drill email or Slack message, how do you zoom out and anchor yourself in what really matters long term, both in your work and your life outside of it? Priya, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah. So I think if I go back to the .com era and then like smartphone and now like AI, right? Like I think I was pretty young when it was the .com, but like smartphone, I've been through it, right? Like, and then AI, now we're going through it, right? Like, so long term, I don't really remember what happened when we were building smartphone apps. I only remember like how many happy hours we had, or like how much fun it was, and some of them are still my best friends, and it's all about like how you build those relationships. I don't remember all of that, right? Like, so even if I think hard, I'm like, what happened to my memory? But we delivered some great products, and that is what it is now. Like, we're not against like a calculator, for example. A computer has really advanced us, and AI is going to help us if we build it responsibly and with the right governance, right? Like, so that's how I see it, and that's how I see it long term, where we're not going to remember like this AI wave and LLM models, which one is performing better, et cetera, right? But we're going to remember this time of excitement, how we all got together, delivered an outcome, and really kind of made progress. And that's the long-term intention, right? And that's why I would say, like, don't fear it, adopt it, and adapt easily, because the most resilient teams are not the ones who are stubborn about how they're doing, right? It's about, like, being adaptable to change. And those are the most resilient teams, and those teams come out really strong. And if there's one thing I would want you to leave with, is just, like, adapt it, don't fear it, embrace it, and then make the best out of it, because I would say it's as good as you want it to be. Otherwise, it's just going to be limited if you see it that way. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Anastasia, how about you? How have you kind of zoomed out and really anchored yourself, both personally and professionally?
Well, I mean, I think there's a million books about the power of the pause. I'm a big fan of putting my phone on airplane mode and taking a moment to pause. Every single time that anyone, I'm sure, in this room has taken a moment to pause before reacting, they're probably generally happy. We're usually not happy when we respond immediately, and AI can be the immediate shortcut where there's definitely an opportunity to have some regrets. So to me, definitely getting up and seeing if I can take a breath and pause, I think, is like number one. And that's a practice. I am not perfect about it at all, but I do absolutely think about it and work to be intentional about pausing and making sure that I'm in the right space to respond or react to whatever is happening around me. I think that's number one. And then I think number two is really just being thoughtful about the way that we're using the capabilities that are unlocked for us. I strongly believe in not doing, cognitive offloading or intellectual outsourcing. There's a huge place for us to think and be thinkers and have the opportunity to spend time on higher order thinking. And that starts with having the power of the pause. And so to me, when I am pressured or stressed, I really do try to take a moment and say, like, okay, can I take a moment, and is there any real reason why I need to respond in this moment in the next 5 minutes? And usually there is not.
I can absolutely agree. So kind of bringing us all together, I'd love for each of you to answer our last set of questions. Ariel, I'll start with you. When you look ahead and think about the next decade, which leadership skill or behavior do you think will matter even more than it does today? And what's a step that someone here, especially all of the women in the room, can intentionally take to accelerate their path to leadership if that's something they're interested in?
Yeah, my answer has actually changed being on this panel. Thank you both of you. So if I take some of your answers, I'm sorry. You can blame me. But I really did like Anasua's with the critical thinking, and just even what you just finished with saying with the pause and really thinking about it, and just even saying, like, do I need to respond to this in the next 5 minutes? And I do think that AI does have that expectation of instant and that instant gratification and getting everything like right now. And so I think being critical and thinking through this, I think that is what is going to be the strong leaders. I think those are going to be the people that write history, are how they're thinking about this critically in a way that they're taking that time and understanding the best path forward to use this technology for the better of the future. And so I do think that the slowdown to speed up thought process, and I don't know if anybody likes to drive cars fast, but like smooth is speed and speed is smooth and slow down to go fast, all those type of things, it's really true. And so I do think also, Priya, you mentioned garbage in, garbage out, right? And so I do think, again, critical thinking, pausing, prioritizing, I mean, you literally just heard it from the panel right here, it's great. Those are the things that you need to take forward. And so if you're looking to become a leader in this space, number one, foundational knowledge is key, because you won't even know how to think critically about it if you don't understand the foundational stuff. So as you heard Priya talking about the web and then the smartphone, and myself talking about servers and automation, if you understand those cyclical patterns and really understand where we came from, you can start thinking about where we're going and how AI can help us. But again, it goes back to that critical thinking and that priority. So I also just wanted to add one thing on the last question too. I do start all of my team meetings. We only have them once a month, my big town halls, with mindfulness. So we actually do take 5 minutes and just kind of do a little bit of a guided meditation or prayer if you're in for that. And I really think it helps people take that second. And a lot of people have told me that's the first time I've taken a breath today. And so I make sure that we do that every single time. And so that would be something I would also say I also need to work on it, because I agree I've answered some messages within that 5 minutes that I wish I could take back. So yeah, but I think that in the future, it's critical thinking and learning how to take that pause are going to be the leaders of the future.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just doing the human things really well, right? Like, so it goes back to, are you doing the right storytelling? Like, are you really valuing, like, driving clarity on the vision? And the third thing that we talked about is just being present, right? Like, are you giving the eye contact? Are you shaking your hands? Like, or are you just on your smartphone? These are things that we have to kind of unplug from, because doing the basic human things right is just what is going to stand out, because you don't want to be like multitask, because all of us have information. And previously there was a lot of like, oh, you need this kind of expertise. Now, like, information is on our fingertips, right? Like, but what would really differentiate you is like how human you are and how you can really bring value to that table by doing the human things right, is what I would say. And then what I would like you to try, men, women, everybody, right, like, is just try a new skill. It took me, like, I started off as an engineer, and now, at my last role at Amazon, I was a GM where I took multiple functions, but it took me a good 12 years to shift from engineering to product to become a GM, and now I'm still doing GM, and I'm really enjoying that. But now the lines are blurring. Like, I would ask you to try a new skill. If your product, go get GitHub or Kiro and anything and start building and doing some vibe coding. Figma Make is a great tool for UX design. Like, so if you're an engineer and you want to try a prototype with XD, do that. There are many products out there which gives you requirements. So just try a new skill, because that kind of really helps you understand the power of what is coming in the future and how much more successful you can be by upskilling yourself. And it's just good, right? Like, I've built a few of my own apps. Like, I've built an anti-inflammatory nutrition diet agent, right? Like, so those are things that those are delightful. And I just want all of you, I would really advise you to try out a new skill.
So mine, I would say, is become a really good question asker. If you ultimately think about it, right, prompt engineering is asking really good questions. And how you ask the questions determine the answers that you get. And I think about this a lot, both not only for myself, but for my own child, as well as I'm sure many who have children, or think about the future of AI and what this means for our entire, race. And if you think about really ultimately back to the critical thinking, it's the questions you ask. It's the why. And the way that we can develop, there's so many books out there about asking good questions, diving deep, being curious. And the more curious we are and the more like analog questions we ask, the better answers. And you even touched on this, Priya, in terms of just, what you put in is what you get out. So when you're really thoughtful about what you want to ask and what you want to know, right? I think perplexity starts with like, what do you want to know today? That's the key. And so to me, thinking about how do you evolve and be a part of this direction we are all running towards, it's really, how do you ask really good questions? What is it that you want to know the answer to? And how do you want to use the tools or capabilities around you to get those answers and be thoughtful about those answers? So to me, it's really be focused on asking really good questions.
So we've heard critical thinking, asking strong and good questions, remaining human. And I want to make sure that everyone here can leave with an action or a mindset shift if they haven't yet. And it brings us to our last question, less than 1 minute per person if you could. If you can leave everyone here with either an action or a mindset shift to build these more human-centered teams, what would it be? And Anasuya, we'll start with you.
I would just say, ask yourself this week or even today, what's the one thing I want to do that I don't have time for? And then think about if there is a shortcut using an AI capability or tool that you can leverage to give yourself time back. Whether it's around making food, whether it's a diet or exercise app, whether it's around an app you want to create, vibe coding, you can literally upskill yourself in 5 minutes or less. And I would make it personal. Think about, what is that one thing that I don't have time for? And is there a capability out there that can give me that time to do that thing? And you might be surprised about the answer.
Yeah, I'm going to take a professional kind of advice and action. So I would say, like, for every roadmap change or a process change, mandate a 30-minute meeting with your team to really bring them back to why are we doing this and what is so human-centered about this. I would say take that action, because it's really valuable to really bring your team along and just get some ideas, because you don't want to build tech for tech's sake. And the action, or the mindset shift is what I would say is really don't think about AI for just productivity. It has a deeper strategic impact to ultimately drive human connection within the products and the technology you build. So how do you take a lens to that? Because you hear it a lot, AI is for productivity, but the ultimate impact is the broader strategic impact to really take that opportunity to build better products. So.
Yeah, I would say if you have not signed up for any sessions or workshop sessions that are AI related, with the exception of this one, obviously, do it. So if you're sitting in the audience and you're like, I don't know, this might be a fad, any of those types of things, go take any of them. Go sit in any of them. I don't care which one. Go see what people are doing. And then when you hear really inspiring leaders, like the two that are sitting right next to me, talk about what they do with it, let that be inspiring to you. So the action I have for you is to go step out of your comfort zone, walk into that room, maybe even walk into the one that you don't even understand the title. Walk in and sit down and listen to what's going on there, and just get yourself comfortable with hearing the words and how people are using it. And I think what you're going to walk away with is just feeling really inspired when you hear people talk about what they do. And it's just in their natural way of what they're doing, and kind of remove that fear factor from it. So that's my action for you, is go sign up for like a technical course on AI and get out of that comfort zone.
It has been such a delight to get to know the three of you and to hear all of your insights and experience. I'm confident that everyone here is leaving knowing not just that the future is human, but why it is and how each of you really add value and contribute to that. So I just want to give a huge round of applause to these three amazing women today. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.